Hello there, and welcome to the Impact Zone podcast. We're back again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans, and we're talking about Becky Lynch potentially being in TNA. Now, granted, this is nearly 20 years ago, according to Miss Lynch herself. So, don't think that Becky Lynch is coming to TNA anytime soon. I don't think she's even out of contract. But hey, I could be wrong, and I don't know all the details and whatnot. But she's discussing TNA as a WWE superstar, as far as what I know. And in the past, that has been a very big no-no for WWE to even mention other companies in any form or fashion. They say that no other companies exist but the WWE companies and whatnot. Nothing else exists, effectively. Even though that's obviously not true. I know most casual fans only know WWE and even call everything wrestling WWE and things like that. So again, it is very synonymous with the industry as a whole, which, is to be expected. But, it's just one of those things. So again, this is about when Becky Lynch was 19. She discussed this in an interview with Alio Harari, and this was back when she was about 19 years old. She talked about joining TNA because back in 2007 or so she would have been joining it just at the same time. Basically, they were starting out with their women's titles and whatnot, and their women's division. Back then, she'd be working with the likes of Gail Kim, and she'd be working with Awesome Kong, the Beautiful People, all those original early knockouts, Roxy Laveau, bunch of others. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but she discussed how the main reason was because, again, TNA was treating their women much better. It goes a bit deeper into discussing some things here and there. I haven't really read through all of it. I haven't seen everything that she kind of said, but that's really interesting. You can see the interview here on the YouTube as well, and whatnot. So she's got a lot to say. I think it's also she's made a book or an autobiography of sorts. So it almost feels like she's almost wrapping up her career almost in some ways, or at least some chapters of her career in some ways. It's interesting to think about Becky Lynch being in that early women's division. I know that she was already a wrestler at that time from what she's sort of said. So, getting to mix it up with some of the industry leading wrestlers at the time would have been a great experience for her. I don't know how far along she could have come at that time, because again, she's really come into her own in the last 5 to 10 years or whatever it's been. I think when she became the man character, that's when I think she actually came into her own. I think that the Irish jig character and whatnot that was in NXT and even on the main roster from points wasn't really it. I think she was probably ready just a bit after that to start becoming the one of the top women in the industry. After that kind of was starting to fizzle down and whatnot, and they were starting to take her in a new direction. I think at that point she started becoming she's now potentially one of the top women in the industry. And once she sort of snapped on Charlotte, I think that's when she sort of made her claim to actually taking that spot of being I know she deserves to be at the top, or very near the top. So yeah, it is interesting, but again, you would think that she would have developed a lot quicker in a in a locker room where everyone's supporting everyone, but there's also that mutual, really strong mutual competition for everyone to get better and improve, because it improves the overall, quality and perception of the division and everything and whatnot. I'm not saying that she couldn't have hanged or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm sure she could have very well, but I think it's funny to think like what the world would be like if she had have stayed in TNA even for a little while, or haven't even been in TNA for a little while, and then done some stuff there, even in her early career, just before going to WWE, or even being, just being released and whatnot. Again, like it's interesting to sort of think about like what she could have done and where she could have been, and the type of experiences that she could have got, and the kind of matches that she could have had, or maybe even the types of feuds that she could have had at that time, or even a little bit later, like you talk, a couple of years later down the track and whatnot and things like that. So there would have been more people in there like Mia Yim and people like that. So, and even later than that, you would be talking about like Chelsea Green and Rosemary and people like that. So yeah, like it's interesting and then Mickie James, who was coming back, and Tara, who made some waves there. And again, like there's so many others, ODB, so many others. But again, it's interesting to see this. It's interesting to see that TNA posted it onto their Twitter, and I think they posted it onto their Instagram as well. So that's a really big like shift recently that, would never have happened before. At least in my opinion, I've never really seen anyone really like that's been in WWE be free to talk about any other promotion other than WWE. And again, for that company to be allowed to, retweet or whatever those comments onto their Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or anything in any way to get any kind of promotion. Again, it kind of almost feels like, I don't want to say that there is some sort of big agreement, but it does feel like there's some small agreements being made between TNA and WWE, which is really nice to sort of see, because I do feel like like WWE should do more to help support TNA, because like that would just help with the health of the wrestling industry overall, realistically. And if they're really about that and not really about just profits for the sake of profits, then, they really need to think about like the health of the industry. And it wouldn't hurt them to support other promotions as well. But, like I'm just saying, as a TNA fan, I wouldn't mind like a little bit more interaction and inclusion. And we did sort of talk about like the fact that Jordan Race went to the Royal Rumble fairly recently. And, we're still sitting here and, like the hell hasn't frozen over or whatever, but it sort of feels like it for a moment there that it did. But, like, where does that go? Like, I sort of want to see somebody from TNA kind of cross over to WWE, or somebody from WWE cross over to TNA in some form or fashion, just to sort of do something more and kind of work some sort of thing for both promotions to do well. And like, honestly, like since TNA, they don't have any shows that conflict with any WWE shows, i.e. they're not on the same day, except for maybe pay-per-views. I don't think that they ever do that intentionally or whatever. So they do that to, enhance their own like standing and whatnot. They're not really going to compete with TNA or whatnot on any day, because like what's the point? They're already competing with AEW on one day, and that's probably enough, or even on almost a couple of days, I think. But even that's enough. But again, like AEW is really competing with NXT more so. But again, there are YouTube shows or whatever that they've got are competing with SmackDown and I think Raw, but I'm not too sure. Um, so they've pretty much got a show every day over there in AEW, which is absolutely crazy. Um, but yeah, like this is cool. I think it sort of feels like it's almost a first step in some regards. Like I think Jordan Grace being in the Rumble was like a first step, but this feels like almost another first step where like now it feels like wow, we're gonna let people talk about other wrestling companies, and we're not only going to let them talk about other wrestling companies, we're going to let them talk, good things about them. Because even if they were to talk about, other wrestling companies in the past, that have to say, "Oh no, I don't know much about it," or "I've heard that it's shit," or "I've heard that," or whatever, like things like that, have to dismiss it or whatever, and things like that. But now that they can actually say, you know what, we didn't really start that women's revolution. Even one of our own talents said that, right here, like it really started in an indie ground roots movement. TNA was really like the first major Western company to really pick up on it as it was happening. And it was happening for quite a while, realistically. You had Stardom and that out there and things like that. But yeah, like you have a bunch of these other wrestling companies that are solely built around women and whatnot. Not, I think, that's cool in some regards, but I think diversity and that sort of thing needs to be a bit more. I think you need male wrestlers too. I think you can't be a women wrestling alone. I think it's cool to be women wrestling and being empowering, but I think you need male wrestlers as well. Or even like male valets or something. You can't just say, "Oh, we're not going to have any male performers on the show." I think that sort of, it's sexist the other way as well. So it hurts a little bit when it's that. You shouldn't really go that way, I don't think. Kind of don't know whether to talk about the Mike Santana stuff that also came up fairly recently, but it's kind of interesting to hear him say some of that stuff as well, even though, he's not a WWE talent or whatnot, or an AEW talent right now, but he's on that free market, and dude, I'd really like to see the guy back in TNA. And he said, "Hey, I don't want to just be another cog in the wheel or whatever." If he goes to WWE, in my opinion, he'll just be another cog in the wheel. Obviously, he's not going back to AEW anytime soon right now. He could go to New Japan, but I don't know. I don't feel like he'd really fit there too well. I feel like he'd just like either slip into the Bullet Club or something. That seems like what everyone does. They seem to slip into the Bullet Club, or they seem to slip into a feud with the Bullet Club. So, like, at least like if you go to TNA, or if he comes back to TNA, yes, he would be either in the system or feuding against the system or something along those lines right now, but at least he'd be a featured and prominent player more so. He'd be not just a wheel in the cogs. He would be a guy that, fits into that upper mid-card level. And I think in a year's time or whatever, or even maybe less, you could build him into a credible world champion very easily. And that's the thing that they would do. Like, they would give him that opportunity and that ball if he came to TNA. I think, if he stuck there for a year or two, or whatever it was, he would be at the top or near at the top. Certainly, I think. And again, you look at like Becky Lynch, like eventually she would have been one of those top guys or top gals in TNA, because her talent, obviously, again, very talented, and she was part of the Four Horsewomen in NXT for a reason, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, and part of the women's revolution in WWE for a reason. So obviously that she's got a lot of talent out there, and nothing but respect for her and whatnot, and all of these other people that are, here, there, and everywhere. I always try to respect anyone who's doing this, incredibly difficult job, 6-7 days a week or whatever it is. And it is like, it is your life, like, and that sort of thing. So yeah. But anyway, guys, for now, I think that's an interesting little tidbit about Becky Lynch. And, I still want to think about some of these things, like some of these little articles or whatnot that are out there that kind of come out here every now and again. We recently saw Ace Austin re-sign with TNA. I didn't know whether to do a little video about that either, but hey, it is what it is. It's not major news or whatever. This isn't major news or whatever, but it's sort of like mind-blowing in some ways because it's been so, like, WWE's been such a bubble unto itself for so long that it feels like, geez, them letting one of their superstars say anything about, especially anything positive about another company, and let alone that also saying something sort of bad about WWE, is like mind-boggling to me in some ways. And for TNA to be able to like retweet it on their YouTube is like, what? You would never have seen this before. Like, but yeah, it's interesting to see what's going on and some of these like forbidden doors to being opened and whatnot, that sort of thing. I hope more of it is sort of opened and that sort of thing. And we'll have to wait and see where it all goes with that. And I do hope for more for TNA and for Impact and whatnot going forward. But we'll have to wait and see where it goes. But you guys can let me know what you guys think. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this one. And I hope you'll join me again in another one.